Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. If everybody can hear us all right online, I'll check back in on that in a minute. But again, some of the information on the deck, this is being recorded tonight, so everybody knows. We've got quite a few people online already tonight as well that are joining us. This is something we've been doing new this year, so we're hoping to keep it going forward, and this is, we'll be on our Yammer site afterwards. If you've been paying attention to the screen, we've got a lot of things going on, right? So tonight's meeting, we'll thank the Duke team, and of course, for coming out tonight to help present on their portal. We've also got some upcoming meetings that have been here as well. So next month, we're doing how to modernize SharePoint Online. We've got the Flow folks coming from the product group for our May meeting, so we will be kicking that off as well. So if you've got some scenarios you want us to try to run by, we can present that to the Flow team, and they might actually build some of those live, and then we can do that here, right? So that's a good opportunity. The guy coming is one of the guys on the product team for Flow, so that'll be a great presentation. SharePoint Saturday, registration is going to open in May. We've already started getting speakers and sponsor submissions. If anybody here wants to sponsor or knows somebody that wants to sponsor, please let us know. That's all out on the site today. You can go out there and view. So that's that. Office 365 user group we're partnering with on events. They're going to be more that IT pro base. So if you've got some IT pros that want to get some more information, or any of you want to join, we're going to be trying to do those first week of the month for them, or the third week of the month for Thursdays, right? And of course, different ways to reach us. So that's the news, and I'll hand it over to the folks that will be presenting tonight.
Okay. There's 4 of us, so we're going to kind of spread out. Yeah, so I'm Martha Brown, and this is Capricia over here, and Carissa here, and James, and Michelle is also with us from Duke Interview tonight. And we're going to show you our portal that was built in Office 365 SharePoint Online. Can you guys hear me okay? We want to invite you to ask questions whenever. You can come off mute if you're online, and we'll try to catch your questions. Yeah, this was our team. We're all sitting there on the steps with everybody from our team. We're missing a few people there. This was our project team. And, one second, Martha, I got to share this with you. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you can kind of see what's on our agenda for tonight. We're going to tell you a little bit about us and our project. We're going to talk about our guiding principles, what we did with our work on the Intranet, and then we're going to give you a pretty long tour of it. And feel free to ask questions if we're not showing you something that you're interested in seeing. And we did a lot of Webpart development, so we're going to go into kind of behind the scenes and show you what it's going to look like. And then as time allows, we'll talk about our content management model, some of the challenges that we've had, and some upcoming enhancements and what our roadmap looks like for this year. This is down there we are, just don't all live here in Charlotte. But our internet's on Office 365, as I mentioned, and we did a project throughout 2017 to replace an old internet that was on SharePoint 2007, and we launched that in January of 2018. And we are part of a customer group at Duke Energy. We used to be part of Social Communications at the time that we did the project, and shortly after that, we all got moved over to the customer group. And a little bit about our team makeup, that post-project, what we have allocated to the team. And we work with Apple, with the Agile Framework, and throughout the project, we did Scrum, and we did the 2-week sprints, but after we launch, we converted over to Kanban, so we kind of do a rolling 1 month view of things right now. That's working for us as we're more in maintenance right now.
I'm really short. Just by show of hands, how many developers do we have here? developers, okay? Well, product owners, designers, engineers, any other roles?
Administrator.
Administrators? Okay, awesome.
We're always forgotten.
Say the best role out. So just want to go through probably touch on a couple of those categories, and just want to get a feel for who we have in the room today. And I don't know if we're able to figure out who's online as well. Probably representative of.
Probably representative, yeah, we might have to use the mic, they're finding it a little hard to hear.
Okay.
Is this working? Everybody hear this better, hopefully? I'll check that.
Okay, thanks, Corey.
Sorry, is it the Teams mic is turned off?
The Teams, we're just going through the phone.
Okay, so let's just start with a couple of guiding principles that we kept in mind as we were working on the redesign for our intranet, the portal. One was to get some brand alignment. So we had recently done a redesign of our public-facing website. We wanted to get some alignment with that, as well as make sure the website was mobilely responsive, and also has ease of support, so allowing it to be sustainable, to continue to maintain it for future needs. And then also making sure there was a consistent user experience. We had a lot of page bloat, some inconsistent grooming throughout different experiences on the site, as well as information that was not necessarily easy to access in a quick manner. And then also access to some new features and functionality that we would be gaining. So we started with a content audit and looked at what was really nice is we had an existing website, so Intranet, so we were able to look at the content that was on that site and selected a few key pages to do audits on, as well as some specific pages that offered unique challenges, design challenges.
This is from SharePoint 2010 to Office 365 07.
This is 07. And not this. This is not this. This is just a screenshot of the audit. Yeah. Yeah.
I know I'll make my case.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And so what we did was just do a little bit of content audit to identify some page patterns, as well as some web parts that we would need, some custom web parts. Krista will talk more about the actual web parts themselves later on. But to identify the web parts that we would need to support the existing content and also some future content needs that we would have. And then also to determine our content strategies, such as having one main call to action and just the approach that we took with the different pages. And we'll go into that a little bit more as well. Borrowing a computer here.
We have a Mac user attempting to use the PC. Give us some moments.
Forgive me, please. Okay. All right, so we'll just take you through a little bit of a tour of the site. Just kind of go through that pretty quickly. PC user trying to help a Mac user trying to use the PC. That's great. So this is the redesign, and this is actually in prod. So this is our portal, and we have navigation here at the top, which is security trim with also single sign-on, and we have designated single sign-on to some HR-related sites, and we've designated those with icons, as well as a mosaic These are basically clickable tiles that link to news articles. And again, these are custom web parts. Quick link section here that allows employees and contingent workers to access the top tasks pretty quickly. We determine those looking at metrics from the existing portal, as well as doing a little bit of collaboration with stakeholders. We also have weather and stock information and an employee connection section, which features a lot of achievement for employees, and we're able to offer high fives, just kind of attaboys, I guess is what we used to call it, but high fives. Also recognize people who are on the move throughout the company, as well as recognize service milestones. So anyone in the company can submit someone for these types of recognitions, and they'll show up here. There is a workflow that is attached to this for review and approval. I think James is going to talk a little bit more about this particular feature later on during the presentation. We also have events for different jurisdictions, so all of the jurisdictions, but then also featuring events within specific jurisdictions. And then also persistent links to helpful pieces of information. This is our news section. And so what we have here is the ability to sort on the different types of news, whether it's employee news or whether it's features news, as well as search the archive, specifically of archive news. This is the blended feed here. Search through specific categories, categorize. And then some links to additional news. We also have several types of pages. As I mentioned earlier, we identified several key types of pages. One is our news article template, and we have different options here, but the ability to comment and share. We're using Yammer for sharing, for commenting, and there are a few features that we are not able to access today when we're off network, and Yammer is one of those. We won't be able to show that, but we do have that capability on network. That's our news article format. The other format that we have is what we call a category page, and this is just a page to get into, to navigate into a specific category section itself. We have our main call to action, and then some additional links. We call these cards, so our nav cards, to get into the different sections. So if we wanted to go into copyright for audio, we have that page, which is a topic page, which is just based on a single topic, so it's more details on a single topic. And we have local navigation to navigate the sibling pages or back up to the parent page. Again, just giving kind of an overview here. This is the FAQ using accordion to get additional information, just to make the page easier to consume. And then our last page type is a department page. We have a key message from leadership, also videos that we'll play using video portal, as well as additional links. And also,
I'm proud to work for the Union, and I'm proud of our focus on safely operating one of the largest and most critical pieces of infrastructure in Audit.
And the speakers work. Okay. Okay, great. And then last but not least, we have a contact component as well. This is a Webpart, contact Webpart that has some pertinent information for people to contact someone that's associated with this page, whether they're the site manager or someone that's been designated. Walk through right there. So, yes.
Just have a quick question come up. Is there any type of auditing you do or other tool that you're using to track like page usage or anything like that?
Yeah. So we're doing a proof of concept right now with Google Analytics, and we're putting snippets of code in each of the web parts that we built. And there are about 30 web parts, and we'll get more into what those all are later in the presentation. Yeah, we were, trying to use another metrics tool that everybody uses with SharePoint. I don't know if I can say the name of it. And we were trying to do a hybrid implementation of that because we still have a lot of SharePoint on-prem. And so we just had a lot of issues. I think it's working now. And so it'll be interesting to compare that data with what we're getting out of Google Analytics once we get that published to our production environment. So that's a work in progress as far as user metrics. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Put this back to the
So we built all these pieces to be scalable. They all respond effectively. Because what we're using are custom pieces. The pieces that Microsoft gives you out of the box are already responsive, but we're building our own, which means that we need to ensure that they support responsive as well. So Capricious kind of moving the page up and down using dev tools here in Chrome, and you can see that things are shifting and reorienting themselves in order to provide seamless experiences on mobile. I think you have some folks who are using it mobile now. Yeah. Cool. So it's something that we wanted to do to ensure future support. Even though maybe mobile is not a high traffic size now, we know that it has the potential to be later. So we wanted to make sure from the get-go we're working hard to make sure that these web parts work for us in the future. So perfect segue into Webpart development, in my mind. So just recapping really quickly some of the goals that we wanted to be sure that we achieved. We wanted to be sure that the pages had some continuity to them, that they were consistent no matter where you were. You could tell you were on the same site. But not only do we want to make sure that you could tell you were on the same site, we want to make sure you could tell you were on a new site. So they had to be this page continuity, but also on brand. So Capricia did an awesome job, designer. She's magical. She's so great at her job. And making sure that all these look the same and kind of give that same aesthetic, even though we're building these things in a web part or widgetized fashion, they all go together. So in order for us to meet these goals, another goal being, content authors had to be able to do this. We had folks to manage content on the intranet that don't have much technical background. Like, they need to be able to understand how to do this, and they need to be able to pick it up quickly because we don't have the means and the resources to consistently and continually train hundreds of people. Lots of folks trying to maintain this information, so we wanted to make sure it was intuitive for them to do so. So how do we do that in the technical world, and how do we support these goals with what we've built? And in SharePoint, that is web parts. They're the modular pieces that build our pages. I think the really cool thing is, if you think about it, we were building these web parts like mid-2017. SharePoint Framework had just become generally available. There was nothing about this, like how to do this, how to use it in production environments, how to make sure we were building these things right, quote unquote, that was for people on the phone, quote unquote, right and effective. So we were sort of, I view us as pioneers in the space. I don't know how many folks were doing this in production when we were, and I just think that that's really cool that this team and this company took this approach of saying, like, we want the latest and greatest. Like, let's go for it. Like, we know that this is the right decision to move us into the future. So we made sure that we built SharePoint Framework. We utilized React within the framework. And then we also used some out-of-the-box web parts, things like document library views, content editor web part, some of the real basic ones that most folks want to leverage and need to leverage. And then the other thing we wanted to make sure is that you're giving these people new technologies that maybe don't have technology backgrounds. We want to make sure that they use them effectively. The web parts that these guys designed were really structured in a way that the use was specific. When users saw these pieces, we wanted them to understand what type of content they should expect in these pieces. And that takes a little bit of maintenance and governance on our side to educate folks in terms of what these web parts are, how they should be used, and really what we're trying to achieve by giving them these pieces. Because we know folks go rogue, and they like to do what they want to do. And so it takes a little bit of corralling just to say, this is what this piece does, this is what we see it being used for, and here's the most effective way to leverage that. So the next few slides, I think the next two, they're not going to tell you anything super revolutionary for folks who do development in SharePoint, but the most consistent way to ensure that your content is consistent is to leverage content types. Make sure that content authors can't deviate and they don't necessarily just have empty free boxes to type whatever they want. We want to sort of guide them in the right direction in terms of what we need in order to output the proper visual representation of that information. So we made a lot of content types. Each web part we built, I think Martha mentioned we built like 33 custom web parts. It has at least one content type associated to it. Some have multiple. And every content type, we made sure we built list templates that support them. We're not expecting content authors to create custom apps and understand how to hook content types into those apps. No, we just want to set it up for them, make it as easy as possible. They can leverage those list templates with the associated content types right out the gate and start putting in that information that they need. That way they can easily dump it into web parts. So, and like I said before, the main reason we're taking this line of thought is consistent input gives us consistent output, and in our case, that output is a visual representation of something. So we're not asking content authors to pick font sizes, colors. Don't highlight anything, please, dear God. So we're trying to make it so that way it's foolproof. They put the information in a non-rich text format, and then we output that information in the way that we want it to be seen. They don't have to worry about what size should my image be. Is it going to crop effectively? We're doing all that for them and making it really easy for them to use these pieces.
But where are you selecting the new icons to?
Where are we selecting them?
The new icons, select me being author, if I add a new entry, so how did it pick the new icon?
So, from looking at this?
Could you go back? Yeah, exactly. So when I say now I say training, now I say Katie, the knowledge transfer.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that pick up a new icon?
So the icons themselves, you can't see it here. So this content type has title, link, and the other column says icons. And we actually did it where it's on a naming convention. So all the icons are uploaded to a singular library that all follow the same naming convention. And users just have to put in a word. And that word is in our design documentation that they can go look at all the icon options. And they can pick the word out they want, put it in the list. And the code knows then which icon they want to select. Does that answer your question?
Brilliant.
Cool. So now into sort of the fun part. So everyone's probably seen content types, used content types, understands the concepts of why we need them. But I think this is what makes these interesting, the web parts interesting. Back in the day, when I would build older web parts, using things like XSLT, the content query web part, and hey, I thought they were great. I'm not mad about it. But now we're doing things much differently, and it's much more intuitive for people. We have much more control over what they're seeing and how they're interacting with these pieces. So in the SharePoint Framework, we actually can build custom configuration panels. And by the way, we're doing all this in Classic, obviously, because it's like fully branded. So I just think that that's amazing as well. So custom configuration panels, we can ask them for exactly what we need. These configuration panel pieces, like the actual properties we create, can even hook into other elements of SharePoint. Like we can read out column names, we can read out list options, we can make it really intuitive for them to sort of understand what we're asking them to do. So one of these pieces you can see here is the what would you like to, I'm going to go point to it. The what would you like to do section. So this is a repetitive content property that we made, a reusable content property, and it allows users to either create a list based on a template that is associated with this web part alone, or they can use an existing list that's already on their site. When they pick use existing list, it's not populating every single list that's in this site. It's only pulling back lists that have the right content types associated to them. So it's trying to make it real intuitive. They can't pick the wrong data. Only the data that they need is going to be able to be displayed in this web part. And we know it's going to be formatted correctly because they're using the content types that we created. Questions on that?
So this sounds like a lot of customization.
It's a lot of custom code, yes. But if you build it in a reusable and modular format, it's a single change to affect them all. So one bit of code controls that same piece across all 33 web parts. So if that were to ever change, you change it once and then you redeploy the app. So like, yes, it's a lot, but doing it in that reusable fashion makes it a little less intimidating to have to maintain and keep up with.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth pointing out, when they started down this journey, our Microsoft modern SharePoint wasn't where it is today, too. Right. And so they almost did a lot of stuff before we did the stuff at Microsoft, right? So it's kind of thinking through all of that process. Yeah. So I think is
well, mostly thinking more on-prem back in 2003, 2007 versions. Whenever you customized it like this, you use things like CourseWorks, for example, and you tried to upgrade SharePoint, everything broke.
Yeah,
so this doesn't, I guess.
It shouldn't, because these pieces live and breathe on their own. They are each their own individual web parts. All their code is contained. We also don't know custom master pages, know things that cause those issues that we see a lot. So there are ways to get around it where upgrading becomes less scary, especially because these guys, they're in SharePoint Online. So like there is no like button to upgrade. It's like, oh, magic, I have something new today. And we have to make sure that that doesn't cause issues.
Right.
So far, I think it's been pretty successful. Microsoft upgraded a couple things. I think we've had one or two blips, which we're going to mention here in a little bit. And I think they come mainly from trying to integrate this modern framework into Classic and seeing some like blips in that use. But we can talk about that for sure.
Are those 33 web parts used across like the 110 portal sites? Are they pretty much spread out, or is it like one portal site needed its custom web part? And that was like, are they, what's the barrier of entry of creating a custom web part for you guys? Like, does it have to be used by everybody and then you guys would do it, or if one group needed it, you do it?
So like from a business case, when do we create a new web part?
Right.
So I'd say 32 out of the 33 are used by everybody.
Okay.
There are a couple that are homepage only, like that mosaic. We want that just to be on the homepage to really brand the homepage. The stock and the weather, nobody else wants to use them. We do have the news article, that page that she showed. That's just for corporate news. So we're going to work on developing another one that's more appropriate for just different business units and their newsletter type of news. But in general, if somebody wants to build something special, we look at it and see if it's, would it be useful to other people? Like right now we're developing a map that wasn't in our list of top things that we needed, but it's come up this year. And even though the people that have asked for it may be the only people that end up using it, we think it could be used in other places. So we're developing it for that purpose. And we look at other things too, like there's a poll quick question poll that's kind of come up from time to time. So that was a low priority, but we're going to try to get to that this year too. So if things do have a use across the board potentially, we'll go ahead and get them in our backlog and get them prioritized.
So doing all these things, crafting content types, aligning those to list templates, building these custom framework pieces that allow for this seamless visualization of this information. All in all, what it's allowed us to do is really create a variety of content with a variety of different display options. So the same content can be input and it can be showcased in different ways. Just as an example, I don't know if this specific piece does it, but just to give you an idea, these images can be either round or square. Your background can be either dark or light. Sometimes you get a blue option. Depending on where your piece falls in the page, maybe we might recommend something over another to help create that visual hierarchy, which comes more into our governance plans. So it's allowed people to have flexibility with their content and be able to present it in a way that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do had they been trying to do it in a rich content editor. That just gets hairy, and we all know that, I'm sure.
Have you had any challenges when you try to simulate the same UI between the devices, across the devices? So like, web it works differently, mobile it works differently, tab it works differently. Have you seen any rendering issues?
Yeah, there's always, cross-browser differences, uniqueness, but most of it can be overcome. It's just a matter of catching it. So it's testing, making sure every time we put a Webpart out, we're testing it effectively. We're doing that cross-browser, mobile, tablet, taking a look at it. The places we found the most issue, is IE. Hold the mic really far away from my mouth. Firefox gave us like a blip every now and again, but also because we're with Duke, Edge is the approved browser. So like some folks do have Chrome on their machines, but it's not like the Duke approved. So we tried to make sure Safari was good. They've got a lot of Mac users. Chrome was good, and Edge, and then IE for those folks who hadn't had their workstations upgraded yet. But yes, we find them. So far, we haven't found one we haven't been able to overcome, but it does happen. And especially because the framework itself is compiling down, so like we're writing it in ES6 and it's compiling that code down, like IE tends to.
I've got two questions. Is there any availability for personalization?
Can I ask a follow-up question? Like, in what way?
Well, hopefully they heard you.
What's the other question?
The other question is, what was most difficult with introducing the governance?
Passing.
Well, we have a whole section dedicated to governance and content management later if we want to try to hit that when we get there.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for the question.
Yep.
Is that person typing?
I'll follow back up with you on that one.
Okay.
One thing, just additional thing to point out here is that. Okay, all right. Didn't sound loud. Is that on these particular pieces shown here, is that we have role-based and also jurisdictional content as well. So on this one on the far right here, this one right here, job aids. People who are contingent workers versus employees will see different items, different content that's displayed here, as well as whether they're a manager or an individual contributor. Different pieces of information and content will be shown here. As far as like personalizing information and content that's being shown to each individual, we're not doing that at this time. But role-based and jurisdictional.
Thanks.
you want me to talk about the guide? Oh, okay. I can talk and you can click if that's okay. This guide has not all, but a lot of the web parts that we developed on it. And this is a navigation pod in itself. And so when you click into these, they go to pages that have the different varieties of the web part there, so you can see how it may be used. There's some text at the top that just describes what it is, what it's for, any kind of specific, yeah, so here's the samples at the bottom of like what the accordion looks like. And you can do groupings of that. You can filter on it. And most everything that we did is list driven. So if you want to open that up, Catricia, and we can kind of look at how the lists are populated if you want to, or the configuration of it. Yeah, there's a sample of how that opens. Driver. we're changing drivers here. Yeah. So we have naming conventions for each of the different types of web parts, so we can find the list when we go in here. That was a lesson learned. We had to go back in there and rename them all after we did the project because we couldn't find anything. So they all have abbreviations. So that ACC is accordion. You can kind of see there if she opens one of these up. It has the permissions there, and then, yeah.
These are the different pieces that might go into this. So this is the accordion item content type. It has its title, some details. It can also allow users to group and order, and then give the iconography if needed. So while most of the columns that are given do something with presentation, others are more just for configuration, things like order, even groupings. Sometimes that's not something that's presented, it's just kind of culminating the data in a way for the content author that makes sense to them. But then other pieces like submit a high five, that would be what you would see on the accordion, and then when it opens, you would see the details piece.
Yeah, are you guys interested in seeing more of these, or do you want to keep going? We can open up some more and look at them. Okay. One of the reasons that we built the guide, too, is for testing purposes. So when O365 does roll out some... I closed it. Oh. We'll see that. But when O365 does roll out something, we have this guide where we can go and test it against all of our web parts and just check and see if anything was broken. And then it's been a great training tool for our site managers. And, it helps them really figure out how to map the web parts to the content they have and to the needs that they have for it. It shows them how to use it. So we're coming back.
I went to cards.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's everywhere. Uh-oh.
Oh, it's not over here. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so cards. Yeah, if you want to scroll down. Yeah, that's a really simple one. Not much to that. We have alerts. We won't show you those, but those are huge yellow banners. There's a global one that goes across the top of every page in the portal, so you can't escape it. And then there's one that's just for each page. It's called a local one, and you can put it on any page that you need to. And those are used for things like when the system is down, like Outlook. We were having problems with Outlook one time, and it was used for that, just to notify people. You don't need to call the help desk. 500 people already called, Yeah. So it definitely gets attention. It's bright yellow. The nav pods we use all the time, and that's a sample there with the rectangular images. You can have it without any images. You can have a circular one, which we don't have shown there yet.
Any special reason to leave the mapping menu on the top bar as is? than
Yeah.
coming with a beautiful customization, because I see you guys have spent a good amount of time on customizing so much stuff. But still I see the standard stuff is still out there.
Yeah.
Shows that this is 65 or so,
Yeah.
16 or something like that.
Yeah,
Any special
yeah, they
reason
told
to
us
leave it
don't
like
mess with it. Yeah, that was the special reason. Yeah, no.
Ribbon?
Yeah.
Yeah, best practice, we never touch the ribbon. Like, as much as we can stop folks from doing customizations in there,
The more we can stop folks from doing customizations in the ribbon, typically that's the way I'll push people as a consultant, just because it seems to be the trend is that all the updates tend to go into the ribbon. And that's like the first thing that breaks when we try to customize it. So even back in, 2013, 2010, when we started saying, like, maybe we shouldn't customize master pages, that kind of went to the same lane of, like, maybe we shouldn't touch the ribbon. There's so much functionality hidden up in there, and it's so easy to break.
So totally agree, but Maple menu is something which is absolutely not required for anybody, right? But why?
A mega menu?
Maple menu, the top leftmost.
Waffle.
Hold on.
Waffle, sorry.
So waffle.
Hamburger.
Hamburger. Food? Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid point that you're bringing up, because you already brought it up. We made a policy. You guys say you made a policy not to change the master page, right? Mm-hmm. Our policy wasn't as good as that. It was, we didn't change core code, right? Okay. But like something was, so it says portal at the top, but that happened to be the name of your site. For our intranet, they asked us to change what said SharePoint, right, on the on-prem. And we went through a little discussion of whether or not we wanted to break the core, we wanted to do a master change. We actually ended up just doing CSS.
That's what we did. Yeah.
It's funny, because we ended up actually just doing it to the homepage. We actually didn't do it throughout the entire collection. It was just literally the homepage. And that satisfied the person enough that was good. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I think, SharePoint in general, not just your portal, but in general, you have to make that decision of whether or not it's worth doing that. Because I know Microsoft threatened us if we went into the core code and changed anything, they would stop supporting us. And we're like, well, we paid for that support, so we want to use that support. So we're like, all right, we won't make core code changes, but we'll make master changes. And same thing, upgrade breaks it, we'll figure it out, we'll revert back to the default and the upgrade. And it's part of our process. We went from 13 to 16, we did that. We reverted to default, and we did our changes again to the master page.
But absolutely, but at this stage, I don't see a reason to leave that Maple menu out there, because when you click on
I'll give you a good reason. It's the Office suite bar. It's not the SharePoint suite bar. That bar cuts across all of the applications and services in the Office suite. And if you start mucking around within SharePoint, you can't muck around with it in Teams, Power BI, and all of the other 25 things. And then you get a wacky UX. So don't go there.
No, I mean, my point here is that in this portal we can write some CSS code to hide that as part of this.
Bad idea.
We could. Could you? Yes, absolutely. Should you? Maybe not, because like Bean's saying, sorry, this is Bean, everyone. Like Bean's saying, when you go into, let's just say, Delve or another application that's out there, that waffle will be there. And for some folks, then they go, what's that? How did that get there? That wasn't where it was on SharePoint. And I think a lot of companies have this fear of, like, we don't want them to know that they're in SharePoint. But they are in SharePoint, and that's okay. SharePoint's a super powerful tool. And as Microsoft continues to push this modern experience, I feel like I always look at Corey, I'm sorry. As Microsoft continues to push this modern experience and the customizations become less and less and less, get your folks used to that feeling, because at some point they may not be able to avoid it.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is, well, I'm in my portal and looking at it. Now I want to go do some of my work, so I want to jump out to OneDrive right now, or I want to jump out to another location. And that's the launch pad for that, right? That's how I get around. It's how I get to my profile as well, right? So that whole bar really ties everything together in the 365 space. So the more it's there, the less questions you're going to potentially get from your users.
Absolutely. Like when you want to switch out, that's the best place. But what I'm thinking is now we are implementing a portal for Intranet. So what is the need? But I buy into you.
Yeah, and we like to consider the portal our digital workplace. You know, it's the default that comes up in any company managed device browser, and so being able to get to that whole Office 365 suite from the Waffle is helpful. I do it all the time. I wouldn't want to have to leave the portal and go somewhere else to get to that.
I've got two questions.
Okay.
So, does everyone have access to this guide?
No.
Okay. Is it just the portal group that has access? Or?
Yeah, we have a group of about 140 people that manage portal content,
okay.
And they all have access to it.
And the other question is, how do your users know when changes are being made to the intranet? Do you communicate with that?
Well,
I guess it would be one that a user would see.
Yeah. I mean, like the homepage changes every day, the news and everything on the homepage.
Right. So, like, I guess this question may be more of the foundational, right? Do you add new components? Do you let people know? Let's say
yeah. If we were to add something like a new component, a new web part, we would let all the site managers know. Yeah, we have a Yammer channel that we use to communicate with them.
Okay.
We'd probably email them if it was something like that, or even set up a lunch and learn to talk about it.
Great.
Okay, so we're talking about the nav pod. Yeah, you had the list up there, I think, maybe. Oh, yeah, there's the elements that go into the nav pods. And one of the things I really like about the nav pods is it helps keep the pages uncluttered, because our old intranet had just miles of links and paragraphs of text, and it was not very scannable. And the concept with this was that you'd break all of that sort of extraneous content into separate pages, and then these nav pods are used to sort of invite people to go deeper and to go into these pages. It clears up the page itself, so like if you're looking at it on a mobile device, you don't have to scroll through paragraphs of text and long lists of links, although we still do have some of those. But, yeah, it's just a really visually appealing way to kind of break out your information and break things down for people. So, yeah, those are those examples. And when we did the project, we picked out all the imagery for those. And then since then, we've kind of let the site managers take more control over that. But that's a little bit difficult, trying to keep all those images on brand and make sure they're using things that are licensed and all that stuff. So we have to keep an eye on that. Yeah, do you want to look at like the image slideshow? Animals in it. Yeah, this is just, a lot of times people have events and they want to show pictures from the events, or they want to show pictures of facilities or things like that. So that's what this was designed to do, and there's different variations of that. But the way you navigate through them, you have these options you can pick when you go in there. Yeah. So that's one. And those images would have to be uploaded to the libraries in order to be able to use them. Let's see, leadership message, that would be a good one to look at. A lot of our departmental pages have executives that want to communicate out to their teams. So this is an example of how we do that. Let's see. Some guidance around it. Hold on.
I think one of the nice things is, if any of you guys have ever built like a pattern library or even talked about building a design system, these folks are building one, by the way, amazing, then it gives folks some idea of like contextual ways that they should use this, but it also helps them understand, okay, I have 2 background color options like that I can use. Images aren't required. It's letting them, it's self-service. Like, no longer do I have to continue to call them up and be like, what can that do again? It's allowing me to go to the guide and make sure that I understand all the features that may be hiding, and I can understand then how to leverage them.
You have forms and workflows in this
Forms and workflows. Not very many. I think the the heaviest we got, I think at one point was we put like an alert on some lists for certain folks, but it's hard to manage that many people when they can kind of go rampant and run their own workflows, because then when they break, like it's up to these guys to maintain and fix them. So not too much, but I think that's kind of been by design more so than anything else.
You use Sharepoint Development workflows, not the flow?
No. Well, Flow is coming to Duke. Duke Security makes sure they vet all their products. So Flow hasn't quite been opened up yet. It's coming, but SharePoint Designer's locked down. Like no one can get into Designer in association with this site at all.
So who owns the guide so that when someone gives you like a question, you're like, oh, the guide doesn't have that. Do you go in and add it, or is it kind of like someone owns the guide and has to say, well, this can't be added or this needs to be added?
Yeah, the guide only has the stuff we built in it.
Right. But, yeah,
so,
it's missing.
Yeah, so something's missing. It's probably not been built yet, and then
Okay.
that would be a whole conversation around, is it something that's needed?
Okay. So
And
once
then
it's built, it goes into...
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then this team owns all this content.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And then also, if there's something that is determined that would be helpful to site managers, such as some additional guidelines that may not be part of a specific web part, but that may be more general. Or we also have a web part called a hero web part that is built into the page itself. And one of the approaches that we took was to actually add the image requirements and specs actually in the template itself.
Right.
And now in retrospect, we're looking at enhancing the guide in order to add that here in the guide so that people have access to that in the same manner that they have access to all of the web parts.
Would you add it to the web part details as well, or did you just feel it's not worth it while you're doing the development on it? Like inline instructions versus having to go back to the guide to get checked through things?
Yeah, so right now it's actually inline
Okay.
in the component itself, in the web part itself. But we also feel like it would be helpful to have it as a one-stop area in the guide as well.
I had another question. What did you do to drive adoption?
Well,
Just turn it on.
here it is. No, the old portal that we had, believe it or not, was really well established, and we had first launched a portal back in 2001, and it's always been the default for the company browser. We didn't change. We talked from time to time about changing the name of the portal to something less generic, but there's just too much name recognition for it at Duke, and it would be too expensive to try to change it. So we just leave it at the portal, and everybody seems to know what the portal is. So, everybody has to come to it to enter their time. All of their benefits are connected through it. So we're not trying to force people to come to it. It's more of an invitation. Here's all the tools that you need. By the way, here's the company we use, and here's all this other stuff. And then, we are probably going to look at pushing people to use it more on mobile devices just to raise awareness of that. But we're trying to sort out some of our browser issues on mobile devices before we do that. But we did do a lot of change management. We did some news stories about here's what's coming. We did videos of the new site. We did a lot of stuff to announce that it was coming. But, yeah.
Thanks.
Did you also users have to be well versed and already know how SharePoint works to create the different web parts on the different pages and everything? Using lists and...
Yeah, it's helpful if they have. He's asking if our people that manage our sites need to know some SharePoint. That's really helpful if they are already familiar with the concepts of SharePoint and how lists work and things like that. It's a good foundation for them.
Only like a subset of people who were actually building out those pages.
Yeah, right. It's just a small subset. It's about 140 people. Yeah. we could go ahead and move into this, talking about the content management model. We can come back to the guides if we have additional questions about that or extra time, which we might have. So we have 110 sites in the portal right now, and there are about 150 site managers. So we try to have no more than 2 people per site, and then some people manage multiple sites. And sometimes we have 5 people, managing a site. But we try not to do that because our team is small and we have to train those people and we have to provide support to those people. So we ask them, please pick a primary and a backup, and let's try to keep it to that. And then we do these 2-hour training sessions, and we do them about once a month. They're on demand if they're needed more frequently. And we just lost me. Let me go back to the yeah, there we go. So we have a resources site that has a lot of materials on it, like our training materials, the link to the guide, stuff like that on there. We have job aids that we've developed for how to do these web parts, and we're in the process now of developing little videos on how to do the web parts. And then when those videos are finished, we're adding those to the guide site as well. We've got one guy that dedicates most of his time to training and support for these 140 people. He's very patient. I mentioned this Yammer channel earlier. It's not gotten great adoption, to be honest. I'll put things out there, but most of the time I don't get a response from people. Yeah, we got a question on that?
Yeah, is there a reason you're using Yammer for that instead of Teams?
Teams wasn't available when we first launched the Yammer channel, but we may switch to Teams. That might be more effective, yeah.
So
I think it probably would be. We do have Teams now.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. How long have we had Teams? 6 months? Yeah. 6 months. Yeah. And then we do these ongoing audits, and I mentioned that we're doing JIRA, that we're doing Agile, and so we have a story in the backlog for each site, and it lists all the things that you're supposed to check when you go in for each site, like are there documents that aren't published, are things left in a checked out state, are the libraries named correctly, are the versions set correctly, are people. We haven't been doing the pages as much as the libraries. We're going to go back and do more about the pages, but are the images on brand? Are they using appropriate imagery in their nav pods? Are their web parts in the right order on the page? Like if you have a leadership message, you don't want that at the bottom of the page because your leader might not like that. It looks better to have that at the top. So things like that, and the shading on the web parts, you want to alternate the shading rather than have all of them with the same background color and things like that. So more of a visual audit we'll be going through, and then we provide that feedback to the site managers and work with them if they need help to make those changes. And we recently started, because we were in project mode for a long time, so now we've started this Portal Advisory Council that meets quarterly, and it has representatives from all these different areas of the company, and we'll be using that to help prioritize what's in our backlog and to get feedback on what we're working on. I've got a roadmap that I'll be showing them next week when we meet with them. And sometimes it's great because you'll end up with competing priorities across these organizations, or there'll be things that they're doing among their teams that other people weren't aware of, and so surfacing all that's really helpful. It's great to have all of them at the table and to be able to speak to what's important to them. Any questions about any of that? Yeah, with the old portal, we had probably 300 site managers because it just grew over time, and we didn't ever take anybody out. We just kept adding people, and so it was kind of a process to go back through and talk to everybody and say, okay, who's really doing this work, and you could kind of look through the libraries and tell who was actually doing the work. So those were the people that we tried to keep with the new one, and we had to manage how many people we trained in the project. When we did the project, I don't have a slide about that, but we doing it in Agile was a totally different way of working for us. Because in the past, we would have waited until everything was ready, and then we would have built it and put all the pieces together, but we didn't have time to do that. So we started building out the site and then going back through the old portal and pulling in the content that was less than 2 years old and putting metadata on it and getting it in the library. So the files were there once the web parts were ready. You'd add the web parts to the pages, pulling the files into the web parts, and you'd have a complete unit. And then we would train the site managers on how to maintain that and how to make sure, go back and look and see if we got all your content. Did we leave anything out that you needed? Did you delete anything that we brought in? And then we did lots and lots of training the last few months of the project with them, and we did lots of day-long working sessions where we fed people, and they would come in and sit with us, and we would kind of work through all that stuff together and put all the pieces together. Any questions about? Well, somebody had asked if it was difficult to get them to follow that. Well, I'll say it this way: we took the content editor web part away, so they only see the web parts that we created. Yeah, I mean, there's some of that of like we don't understand, but for the most part, people were really supportive. They were encouraged. They were grateful that we had done the initial build for them. And I was really kind of frankly surprised how easily people adapted to Agile, because it was an intense time for us. It was the whole HR platform was moving to a different vendor. We were rolling out Office 365 at the same time. There was just a lot of change happening, and I was really proud of everybody for how well they just took things in stride and just worked through it together. It was a great sense of collaboration. Questions?
Yeah. So I think again, like you talked about migrating from the old sites to new ones. So how does an employee or a business manager request a new SharePoint site? And then how do you make sure that again, that maybe once a year you're looking at what's old and how do you cull it out and say that it's not being maintained? So that whole administration side. That's the first question. And the second is, what's the large, and do you have some limits on how much people can upload, how much video or file sizes, or is it just whatever you want?
Yeah, I'll take those in reverse order. With the video and the file sizes, we use the O365 video channel right now, and we're going to be switching over to Stream later this year. So we don't really manage the video channel within our scope. We're just overseeing the intranet, and we don't even oversee the rest of the SharePoint environments. The IT department manages that, so we just have this narrow scope of the intranet. And so if somebody needs a new site, there's a link in the footer, to reach out to us, or they just know to reach out to us and say we need this new site. And we have had quite a few new sites added, I think, since we launched. I think we've gone up from 100 to 110 sites over the past year. So they just kind of present their business case of who this is for, what it's needed, why it's needed, and who's going to support it. And then we'll usually help them get it set up and then train them and turn it over to them to manage. And then with keeping things up to date, that's part of what we do when we do our audits. We'll continue to look and see and we'll use metrics when they're available to say what's actually being used on the site. And, you don't need to maintain this because nobody's looking at it. It's time to let it go. So, yeah.
In addition to image sizes, we have recommendations that are added either in line with the web parts or on the guide, will be on the guide page as well. So there's specific image sizes related to certain images based on how large they will be used.
I understand another add-on. So do you have any chargebacks to the business guys or whatever? So
no.
One business unit could have 50 sites, and the others are just using one. That's okay.
Yeah, that's right. Like our HR department has, 40 sites. Yeah, and they do have a person in HR that oversees all of that and kind of coordinates all of that, so we're not having to deal directly with all of those people. Yeah. Any other questions about the content management of it? Yeah.
Any document retention policies?
No. No official policies on it.
So the 110 sites that you say, that is all about the functions, then like HR, then IT, that's the from of that 110 sites?
So I couldn't quite hear you.
No,
The 110 sites you say that they are, so is it by the functions, like HR,
Oh, yeah.
finance?
Like the people that manage them, is that the question? Yeah, yeah. They're down in the business, throughout the business, and we believe it's best that way because that's going to give you the best content if you have the people closest to it who are managing it. And we would be a bottleneck if they put us on their changes. We would get behind. So it's better that they can do it. Yeah.
Who is on your portal advisory council?
Like management director level people from IT. We've got the O365 team. We've got the SharePoint team. And we have cybersecurity.
Oh, so that list is the people who are in the advisory council?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
No, those managers and directors from those organizations make up that team, the council.
So,
Yeah.
so have people started using the same sites on the mobile phone too?
Say that again?
Has there been like people using
Oh, yeah.
on mobile?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So they're able to upload everything,
Yeah.
if they want from the mobile and stuff like that.
I think so. I'm not. I think there are some restrictions on uploads and downloads if you're on a non-Duke managed device, but I can't remember the details of that right now. But yeah, they can definitely make edits on their pages and things like that online. Yeah.
Have you already started planning with a move from classic to modern? Because there are a lot of things changed in the modern world right now. The hub sites and the news layouts are pretty inbuilt right now.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
News and communication.
Yeah.
Like mainly.
Yeah. Yeah. If we want to go on to the roadmap, some of these things are.
I did have one question.
Yeah.
Are there any enhancements that you did for search?
Yeah. Do y'all want to talk about that?
Yeah, so search does have some enhancements. That was one of the user complaints that came out of the old site, actually, that people just couldn't find anything. And that's what happens when sites age. Things get unorganized and it becomes difficult. So we did a couple of things. We made some custom display templates, one in particular for people. So the old Duke portal had, it was called Employee Directory, which was like an easy way to find like who people were, where they sat, their how you could send them mail, and we wanted to kind of update that and integrate it. Yeah, we'll pull it up really quickly. And the other thing we did were, it used to be called Best Bets. Thank you. My brain can't let go of Best Bets. So just go to any search, or I search Marcel a lot, and she comes up. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you kind of like auditing, like keeping an eye on the searches? Or
When our metrics are really up and running, we're going to definitely look at search.
You had mentioned that you're going to do analytics on the web parts. Are you going to do analytics on the pages too? Do you already have it? Okay. So that's the enhancement is the web parts or analytics just in general? Like you don't have Google Analytics on the pages right now, right? Or you have it on the pages?
No, not yet. But it would be on the web parts that pick up the pages.
Okay.
But not on the pages. I don't think
Not on the pages.
put it in the pages.
So here's an example display template for people. So you can see we've got 2 Martha Browns here, and it gives like their email, their work phone, mobile, things of that nature. I think if you search travel, that has. The other thing we wanted to do was make sure we were kind of bringing things up as much as we could for really common searches. So we actually had a member of the UX team who did a little bit of user research in terms of what are people searching for, what are they trying to find most often, and then made those into search very easy. Travel services, travel policy, and the travel work expense policy are the things that people are hopefully trying to find most when they look up travel. So we're trying to help them out a little bit, especially as the portal grows and grows. The search results can get a little bit unwieldy, so surfacing up things as much as we can. So that is how we did a lot of search, or that's mainly the search updates that we did. I think there were a few more, but.
Yeah.
So have you also migrated the content from SharePoint 2007 to online?
Oh, I'll talk about that in just a second. With the, so we had this illustrious phone book application that was built in-house like 25 years ago, and everybody loved it. I mean, it's just everybody used it every day, of course. And it was in the top bar of the old portal, and so it had to be retired because of all the stuff that HR was doing and moving to another vendor. And so this had to compensate for the beloved phone book. And so if you scroll back down and do show more, this was something we heard in the very first week after launch was, I can't find somebody's responsibility code. And we're like, well, why do you need it? And they might be processing, I don't know, something in supply chain or, something like that. And they needed all this extra information about people that we didn't anticipate they were really going to need. So we came in and added this and expanded this out so it pulled more information in from their profiles. And then everybody was happy. We haven't heard anything since then. And we can't really show you this off network, but if you click on somebody's name, it takes you into their Delph profile. And then I was going to mention about the filters, too. We disabled most everything because our team uploaded most of the content, as I was telling you earlier. And so we didn't want our names to be associated with every tidbit of information at Duke Energy. So we just took that part off. But over time, I think we might add that back. And you were asking about migrating content. So we didn't do any mass migrations of content. It was all pretty much done by hand, looking at everything.
Why I asked is, way back in 2007, people are very much fond of using InfoPath forms for their custom forms. So have you seen any that kind of challenges? Or no?
No.
Once the new portal went up, the old portal went down, and that was it. So it was like, people could get there if they needed to, or we could help them, but, and like Martha said, the scope of what we did was so small. Like, there's so much else that's in Duke Energy's, SharePoint ecosystem. The portal is, a piece of it.
So, that stuff could be still out there in the world, but it didn't really affect the portal.
Lucky.
Now, in regards to search, are y'all using managed metadata, the term store and tagging documents and things like that, so people can find?
Yeah, predominantly with managed metadata, predominantly used with news articles and jurisdiction information, things that are consistent, their jurisdictions are always South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, and so making sure that we could pull anything that we could from that, we tried to do. So yeah, it does leverage it.
Are there any reports, 2007, definitely they would have implemented an SRS reports or something like that? Do you have anything like that?
Not right now.
So no reporting implemented as of today?
For search in particular, or in general? Or?
In general.
I think the goal with getting Google Analytics is to bring some of that reporting, but
I'm going to go ahead and move over to, James is going to talk about some enhancements and some user testing. So we have time to get that in, and then we'll take more questions.
Thanks, Martha. I feel like I've been lurking in the background so long. I'm going to reintroduce myself. James Bowen, manage the internal UX team at Duke Energy. We're a shared service. The portal is one of the products we support, but there are a few others as well. Had a few items I wanted to share with you today. One of them is this UX platform called UserZoom. This is not something we've actually used on the portal yet, but have big plans for it. It's an online usability research platform that's going to hopefully allow us to be kind of a bit more kind of nimble, if you will, and do more testing. It will also kind of hopefully allow us to do, and it does stuff like moderated usability testing. You all are probably familiar with that kind of, one person sitting with an end user, kind of having them go through a task and kind of seeing what goes wrong and having them think out loud while they're doing it. It can also do unmoderated testing, so you can just kind of put a test out there in the wild and get a bunch of feedback. And that's a great way to get lots of quantitative results, so you can kind of measure time on task and errors and things like that you can't do for a smaller sample size. And things like tree testing and card sorting are really useful on intranets because they have so much content. Kind of helps you figure out your navigation structure and the kind of terms that make sense to people, so you're speaking their language. And then click testing, timeout testing, that's a way to test visual design, kind of see if the visual hierarchy is intuitive, people know where to click. Really good for home pages and product pages and things like that. And so with this new tool, it's going to unlock a lot of capabilities for us, but it requires someone to kind of really drive the bus. So this is a new role on my team. Kind of previously I had just developers and designers, but this someone is going to be just focused entirely on research and kind of using that tool to drive that research. And kind of one of the things that we're looking to do is to kind of make it into more of a kind of a research program. So instead of just kind of ad hoc testing, like here's a feature, let's get some feedback on it. Let's do some benchmarking that we do on a recurring basis and establish some UX KPIs that we can report up to leadership and kind of give them some insight into how well we're doing from the UX perspective. And so a couple enhancements that are going on. So we talked a little bit about search, and we feel really good about search. Like I use it all the time myself, and it's like every time I type a term in there, it comes back one of the best bets, but like even the organic results are pretty good too. So we're considering making that a more prominent element in our navigation. So this is just a prototype or a mock-up that shows what that might look like. You can see the search bar is kind of right there in the main navigation. You don't have to click anything. You can just put your cursor in there and start typing. And what we would envision is it would give you some predictive results as well. So you'd start seeing things match, and they might kind of match across different categories and show your best bets right away. So you might not even have to go to the search results page. This is another enhancement that Capricia alluded to earlier. We were looking at the employee connections. This is a feature on our homepage where you can give a high five or kudos to someone or kind of org announcements and service milestones and stuff like that. For a lot of these SharePoint Framework web parts that we developed, Carissa and team developed, I should say, it was just kind of the content on the page, but whenever there's an archive kind of, or a need to see anything historical or beyond kind of the one or two that show on the page, we were usually sending people into the SharePoint list, which is not always the kind of nicest experience. So it can be good for certain circumstances, but for others you want it to be a little bit more of an immersive UX. So this is an example of the Employee Connections archive. So people want to see some of these that have already rolled off the homepage and kind of dig into the history a little bit. It'll be a more visual presentation of that. And that's mine, so I'm going to hand it over. Got through that pretty quickly. And hand it back to Martha.
Yeah, this is just a sample of our roadmap, which is constantly changing. And so this is just even mapped out through this year, and I've still got stuff to drop in for the fourth quarter. And I won't read all that. It's just kind of a way to visualize that we still have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of goals, a lot of enhancements that we want to make. And, we've got some things that we've got to figure out. Like a lot of people within Duke are starting to use the communication sites in the modern experience and the news and all that from there. And so, how are we going to do a better job of integrating that into our portal or helping people find those sites? And then around governance, what belongs there instead of in the portal and things like that. So we've got some work to kind of keep pace with Microsoft's roadmap and kind of figure out how are all the pieces going to continue to fit together. And we also do need to figure out whether we're going to go to modern and when we're going to go to modern. And that would be a huge paradigm change from what we've built here. So we've got a lot of talking to do to figure that one out and figure out what the level of effort would be for that and the impact to our users. And I do want to say that Carissa is actually with Insight, and she's lived and breathed with us for so long, I feel like she's ours. But I did want to give credit to Insight for offering us amazing talent that really helped us get where we needed to be with this project. And then, do we have another slide with the challenges that we had on it? I was just going to talk about a little bit about that. Let's skip over that one. Let's just skip it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one too. Yeah, so we've already talked a lot about metrics. That's been a challenge. We had some performance, just issues, I'd say. It wasn't the fastest thing in the world when we first launched it. And so we had done some things with audience targeting with web parts on the home page. And like those quick links buttons, you saw different versions of those depending on your role in the organization. So instead of doing audience targeting, we went back and made that list driven and put the permissions on the list rather than on the web part. So we had one web part that was list driven instead of 3 web parts with audience targeting, if that makes sense. And then, can you talk a little more, Chris, about this?
Yeah. So the one Martha just mentioned, actually something I didn't know. So Microsoft came in to kind of help us assess, what was slowing things down. And when you do audience targeting, it actually makes like over 132 calls, like to do that targeting. So we were doing that 3 times, and that was so that was sort of eye-opening to me because I kept being like, I don't know where these are coming from, and he's like, it just does it on the back, and I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. So if you have that, it's not very performant. Just so you know that might be something you want to think about adjusting. The other thing was the global navigation. So we do have a mega menu on this site. Bonus points, there are elements in the mega menu that are security trimmed out. So like, hey, executives can only see this one link, managers should be able to see others. Contingent workers get a whole section removed. So it's, when we built it at first, we were almost to the finish line, and it was like, oh yeah, by the way, these things need to be trimmed out. And how it was built, I'll accept that this was my fault, was not the most performant. And it was quickly called out that was not the case. I was doing checking on membership in JavaScript, and it blew out. Checked 148 links one at a time. So my bad. So updated that to also make it more performant. Did the same concept that we did with the quick links in terms of making these things in lists and then trimming out the items in the list, because when you call API calls, they're already security trimmed out, so that made that a little bit more performant. We leveraged the CDN functionality that Microsoft gives us. I think we did a public CDN, if I remember right, and we were coming to find out that there were some elements that we thought were pulling from the CDN but weren't. Small configuration issue. We just didn't have generic library pointers to let them know to look into the CDN. So making those small, quick changes and really understanding how our configuration could be set up more effectively to make us more performant. The next one we're looking into is we use the PMP for some of the code in our web parts, and the PMP has a method for caching out the gate. So we're going to attempt to leverage that caching, and we just have to talk through, from the business perspective, what's okay that it gets cached and who's going to be grumpy if their stuff doesn't show up right away. So we have to do some of that requirements definition around what that caching could be, how it could work, how long it could be and still be okay, and do a little bit of configuration on that. So hopefully that will just continue to help the page become more performant as we go.
We're still sorting out the whole mobile browser thing. The site really is beautiful when it responds down to mobile devices, but the browsers are not always compatible with SharePoint and stuff. So
what's the browser that you guys use?
It was AirWatch, but we're gonna probably switch to something else.
I was gonna say you're using you're pushing out the browser, the secure mobile browser, using mobile device management.
So not like Chrome browser, the default browser on your phone, like the special Duke browser.
Yeah, the secure browser.
Like that's the one that's coming in.
What about the SharePoint Mobile App?
Yeah.
It doesn't keep the branding intact. No, it's a big deal. We put a lot of work into that brand.
I think the fact that one on the first slide was branding.
Yeah, no, you can't take our branding away. Yeah, so it's like there's something with everything, and so we're trying to figure out what's the best of all of our options. You can get to it from any browser. You just have to do your two-factor authentication. And one thing that we didn't realize when we got ready to roll this out, I mentioned earlier that Office 365 was being rolled out at the same time, but this was the first enterprise, usage of O365 anybody was doing. And so we didn't know to anticipate that you had to call in or you had to establish your Office 365 profile before you'd be able to get to the portal. So that was a big change management issue, and it was right around Christmas. And so if you didn't do that, you weren't going to be able to get to the portal. So it was unfortunate timing that all that happened at the same time as the HR tools were changing and they outsourced the help desk. And, it was just a perfect storm. But it really went pretty well, all things considered. We've had a lot of kind of like what to do about dev and QA environments and being able to copy things from one environment to the next and keep those environments in sync. It's been really challenging. And the other thing I didn't mention was that they did a company-wide new workstation rollout. And so everybody was getting the new Edge browser, which hadn't been available during the project, so we hadn't really tested with the Edge browser. So that had a few surprises in store, like some things with employee connections broke for a while. I can't remember what was needed to fix that. Yeah.
Stop working or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, was there another one on that? Oh, yeah. And so, you think when you're going to the cloud and you think, well, Microsoft, our friends there, can roll out anything in any time and you don't know what to expect. We haven't had a whole lot of, we're like, what could that be? But one thing was our configure button broke in the Classic experience. So when you went in to edit a web part and you clicked the configure button and nothing would happen. And that was challenging for a few days. And then that was fixed. And then we had a thing with some kind of permissions on the master pages library that had to be changed because people couldn't create pages all of a sudden. That was weird. And then with our HR vendor, they're cloud-based too, and they made some changes to the security settings in their Edge that affected Edge. And so nobody's links were working to the HR vendor for a while until they rolled back those changes they made to their browser. And then just different things we didn't know to expect, like when we were demoing and we couldn't show you Yammer or Dell because we're not on the network. Well, we didn't know that was going to be the case. Those kind of things like cybersecurity vetting, all of the tools in the O365 suite of tools. They're kind of like releasing them one at a time, but only on certain browsers and only on certain devices. So it kind of impacted us, so we didn't know how to anticipate that. So that was a challenge. So, yeah. What else? Yeah, I hate to end with the challenges. Overall, we're really glad we did O365. We think it was the right choice to go ahead and get in front of that wave. And even though it was painful to be out of the gate first, we wouldn't want to have to go back and redo it later to get caught up. We're glad that
You're there.
That we're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're glad we're there. And and that we went ahead and did the responsive design. So, things are just changing so quickly in the landscape, the digital landscape, that we wanted to try to get as far out as we could with this work. So.
Was the portal committee in place, the advisory committee, before you went to the cloud? Like, when from 2001 to the cloud did that group come online?
So we had a group, we called it a steering team before.
We called it a steering committee.
Yeah, we've had that all along. We didn't meet during the project because there were so many other chefs, in the kitchen during the project, and it was just too many meetings. And, so we kind of put that aside for a while and then brought it back after we got the launch done.
They drove go to cloud, or was like, where's the original, like, we're going to go to cloud kind of, besides for running on 07, that's been definitely.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. We ran out of support, so finally.
You bring yourself to cloud? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that was left up to us. Nobody was really pushing for that. Everybody was a little nervous about it because it was a big gamble, really. Because we had this deadline to meet with the HR project that made sort of escalated the risk factor of everything. But yeah, IT had to get that whole environment stood up and ready for us, and we didn't have an environment to work in the first 2 or 3 months of the project. And we actually spent a good bit of time learning how to work in Agile too, and getting used, because we'd all worked together for a pretty long time, and that was a big change for how we worked together. But, other questions, thoughts? Yeah. Well, we appreciate the opportunity to get to share this with you guys, and we'd be happy to take your questions later.
Thanks again, everybody, for joining.
What are you trying to do? Just make it hard.
Oh, yeah. I'm showing that.
Yeah.
One sec. We have a little bit of feedback, a little QR code or what have you, if you guys wouldn't mind filling that out. I'd appreciate it. Thanks again for coming out tonight, and really special thank you to the entire portal team for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. It's great when we get case studies. If you at your company have a case study that you'd like to present up here, we definitely would welcome that. So definitely get in contact with us. Our email is info@casug.org. So certainly send us information. If there's sessions that you would like us to present, also send us information about that. We definitely want to hear we want to have these sessions mean a lot to you guys. So we're good for the next 2, obviously. And then, so we're looking for something in June, July, and then we're skipping August because of the SharePoint Saturday. And then, let's see, August, September, October, and then November, December is the first week of December. So we combine those 2 because of all the holidays. So once again, thank you for coming out, and leave feedback as you can.
Everybody.
Appreciate it.